Thank you. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. And I will tell you why. Because you guys are doing exactly what has to be done in this country. You are organizing at the grassroots level. You are standing up and fighting back against Trump's racism and sexism and homophobia and religious bigotry. You are fighting for a government that represents all of us and not just the 1%. Thank you very much for what you're doing. The crisis that we are facing today is not complicated. It has everything to do that we have a government that ignores the needs of working people, ignores the needs of minorities, ignores the needs of women, yet works overtime for wealthy campaign contributors and the 1%. And what our job is not radical. It's what the American people want. They want a government which represents all of us, not just the people on top. So thank you for helping to lead that fight. Now, in the midst of a lot of bad news that comes from the White House, I want to give you some good news. And that is, we have come a long way over the last 4 years, and you guys are part of the progress that we have made. Let me give you some examples. 4 years ago, when I ran for president, and some of us were talking about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, we were told we were crazy. It was a radical idea. Remember that? Imagine doubling the federal minimum wage. Well, guess what's happened? 6 states have already voted to raise that minimum wage. And a few weeks ago, the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Education and Labor voted out of committee a bill to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. A few years ago, we were saying, you know, we're living in a competitive global economy, and if this economy is going to be successful for working people, everybody in this country, regardless of income, has the right to get a higher education. People said, oh my God, that's just too radical, can't be done. In the last 4 years, all over this country, cities and states are moving to making public colleges and universities tuition-free and to substantially, and this is what our job is, we are going to substantially, if not completely, end the outrage of millions of Americans dealing with student debt in this country. And 4 years ago, we had you really want to hear a really radical and crazy idea? I mean, this is so radical, I hesitate to bring it forward. Imagine, you know, the establishment went crazy, media went nuts, still is. Imagine the United States joining the rest of the industrialized world and guaranteeing health care to all people as a right, not a privilege. Well, we've come a really long way. That was a radical idea 4 years ago. Poll after poll shows a majority of Americans support that idea as well. All right? 4 years ago, we were talking about the ugliness, vulgarity of the United States having more people in jail than any other country on earth, disproportionately African American, Latino, and Native American. And we said that maybe instead of investing in jails and incarceration, we should invest in our young people in jobs and education. Well, we are beginning to see, we got a long way to go all over the country, good people standing up and saying, our goal is not to have more people in jail, it is to have fewer people in jail. And when we talk about criminal justice reform, we have to talk about ending the war on drugs. 4 years ago, it was a radical idea to say maybe we should legalize or decriminalize the possession of marijuana. Well, 4 years have come and gone, and guess what? State after state, including the state of Vermont, D.C., have done just that. 4 years ago, there weren't many voices out there that were talking about a corrupt political system in which billionaires are able to buy elections, and that maybe we should move to overturn Citizens United and move to public funding of elections. 4 years ago, there was not a whole lot of discussion about the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality in America, where 3 families today, listen to this, 3 families own more wealth than the bottom half of the American people. And at a time when millions of families, people are working 2 or 3 jobs, 46% of all new income is going to the top 1%. So what we said, and I think more and more people are saying it now, maybe instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires and large private corporations, maybe we should demand that the wealthy and profitable corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. The mantra of our campaign is not me, but us. And the reason for that is not just that it sounds like a good bumper sticker. The reason for that is the simple truth. No president, no matter how well-intentioned or honest he or she may be, can do it alone. So I'm going to tell you what very few people will tell you, is that the power of Wall Street, the power of the fossil fuel industry who lies to us every day about climate change, the power of the insurance companies, of the pharmaceutical companies, of the military-industrial complex, that power is so great that the only way we defeat it is when millions of people, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American, gay and straight, immigrant and native born, unless we come together and say to Trump that those days of hatred and divisiveness is over, we're going to bring our country together to fight for an agenda that works for all of us and not just the people on top. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Senator Sanders. All right, come on and join us over here.
Where would you like me?
Oh, if you don't mind sitting right here.
That's fine.
Come on, y'all can clap it up again. All right. Yeah, we're not a quiet bunch. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Senator, thank you so much. So now comes the best part, which is you will get questions from people in the audience,
okay.
Some of whom have traveled very, very far to see you and talk with you. We will have 3 questions. You will have about 6 minutes. I will introduce the people who are asking the questions. Kelly will help you stay on time. If we have time within those 6 minutes, we will ask you some follow-up questions. And remember, the 3rd question is your final question, so you should use it also as your closing. So are we ready to have some fun with Bernie Sanders? Let's do it. So the first question comes from Ebony Wiggins, a Planned Parenthood patient advocate and supporter from Nashville, Tennessee. Ebony was a vocal opponent of Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court. Thank you. And has publicly told her story to show what is at stake for the right to safe and legal abortion in this country. Ebony, take it away.
Hi, thank you, Bernie. Thank you for being here. Also just want to say RIP Nipsey Hussle for giving me so much strength to talk to you right here. For the culture, for the culture. So Bernie, 1 in 4 women will have an abortion in America. I'm one of those women. I'm 27 years old. I had my abortion when I was 22. It's about 5 years ago. I can sit here and tell you today, yesterday, and back then that I am 110% shameless within my choice. I did what was best for me and what was right for me, and I did it, and I took action when action needed to be had. But today in my hometown of Nashville, Tennessee, where I've lived there for about 23 years, a woman has to wait 48 hours after her initial appointment to get an abortion. This past month, in March, the Tennessee House passed the bill, the fetal heartbeat bill, which pretty much means that a woman is denied the right to an abortion after 6 weeks. Most of us don't even know that we are pregnant within that time frame. To bring that full circle, we now have a Supreme Court that could possibly take away the right and the access for us to even have that options for future generations. I say all this because, as you probably know, for the past few years, Republican Senate leadership has completely ignored the American people. They have dismantled long-standing processes in order to confirm justices that are very extreme. One of these examples is the obstruction of President Obama's nominee, Merrick Garland. And then, after that, they want to go ahead and change the rules to confirm Justice Gorsuch and the infamous Brett Kavanaugh, despite his unwavering public disapproval. With this increasing political influence on our judiciary, specifically with the Supreme Court, it is clear we must restore legitimacy within our court on a federal and state level. There have been a few ideas that have been presented. Some people have said that maybe we need to increase the seats on the Supreme Court from 9 to 11 to even maybe 13 to bring that balance back, right? Others have also recognized that America, as a democracy, we are the only democracy in the world where these justices have a lifelong appointment, and that maybe now is the time where we need to put some limits on those terms. I'm asking you that if you become president, what sort of reform measures would you take to restore legitimacy to our federal courts, along with allowing elected officials to govern successfully, and most importantly, ensure that fair-minded, unbiased, non-political people serve on the bench?
Can I stand up?
Yes, absolutely.
First of all, thank you very much for your courage. Okay? It's not easy coming up here and saying what you did. And as a strong supporter of Planned Parenthood, I want to applaud the grassroots activism of Planned Parenthood and standing up and not only fighting against these horrific anti-woman legislation that we are seeing all over this country, but standing up and saying that women will not accept, and men will not accept, the defunding of Planned Parenthood so that millions of women will no longer be able to get the health care that they want. All right, thank you very much for that. Second of all, in terms of the issue of choice, you know, I understand, and we all understand, that there is a division in this country. But what I really don't understand and don't accept is the hypocrisy of my Republican colleagues who day after day say, you know what, we are conservative, we want to get the government off of the backs of the American people. We want a limited government. Let the American people do what they want, get government off their backs. Except when it comes to the right of a woman to control her own body. Now, that is absolute hypocrisy, all right, okay? And I will do everything I can, and there's a lot that a president can do to make sure that that decision of whether or not one has an abortion is the decision of the woman, not the federal government, not the state government, or the local government. Okay, in terms of the Supreme Court, here is my concern about expanding the numbers of the Supreme Court, say if the Democrats are in a position to do that. What my worry is that the next time the Republicans are in power, they will do the same thing. So I think that is not the ultimate solution. What I do think may make sense is, if not term limits, then rotating judges to the appeals court as well, letting them get out of the Supreme Court and bringing in new blood. But at the end of the day, this is what I do believe. And it's not only about a woman's right to choose and about the courts. What we have got to do is demand, and this is what my campaign is about, and it's what all of your efforts are about. We have got to grow the voter turnout in this country, which is now one of the lowest in the industrialized world, to the highest in the industrialized world. We have got to get young people participating in the political process in a way that we have never seen before, because at the end of the day, no matter how cynical folks here on Capitol Hill are, they know that if millions of people stand up and say, we will not allow you to overturn Roe v. Wade. We will not allow you to take away the constitutional right of a woman to control her own body. When people stand up and fight back, trust me, that message reverberates even on Capitol Hill. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. So the next question comes from Lauren Poteet. I'm sorry if I butchered it. Lauren is from Southern Virginia and currently serves as the chair for women in the NAACP DC chapter. And she's an inaugural member of the NAACP Next Gen program, which trains millennials to assume leadership roles within the organization.
Great.
And one of the running themes of today has been the role of young people in transforming this moment, transforming our democracy, and really painting a vision for the future. So we are so excited that Lauren is here.
Hello, Mr. Sanders. So excited to be here today to ask you a question, one that's very important to me as a person of color. I come from Southern VA, Danville to be exact. Hey, Danville, any Danville? No Danville? Okay. It's very close to Charlottesville, Virginia, and as you know, back in 2017, there was a horrific violent protest, racially charged, and it really hit home for me, the horrible face of racism that's in the United States. And so my question to you is, which we did ask Elizabeth Warren earlier, but we now want to hear from Bernie Sanders, if you do become president in the 2020 elections, during your first 100 days in office, what plans of action do you plan to address when you're talking about voter suppression, making it feasible for everyone to get to the polling offices and to kind of stop this ongoing attack on people of color's voting rights?
Yep.
Thank you.
You know, thank you very much. Thank you for that excellent question. Let me speak personally on this. You know, I was mayor of Burlington for 4 terms. I was elected to the Congress, elected to the Senate. During my political career, I lost the elections. When I started out, I was on a third party. I got 2% of the vote. And the next election, I got 1% of the vote. So there you go. Last time around, I got 70%. So you make progress over the years. But here's my point. Honest to God, it never occurred to me as a candidate, running for re-election or running for anything, to sit down and talk to my friends and say, you know what, we're weak in that part of the state. Let's figure out a way that we can keep people from voting because they might be voting against me. And what I say to those Republican governors and attorneys general all over this country who are working overtime to try to suppress the vote for people of color, for young people, for poor people in general, what I say to them from the bottom of my heart is if they don't have the guts to participate in a free and fair election, they should get the hell out of politics and get a new job. You know, in politics, you win elections and you lose elections. Our job is to make it easier for people to vote, not harder for people to vote. So what do? We do a couple of things in terms of election reform, and this is something that must be dealt with by the next president immediately. And that is, if you are 18 years of age in the United States of America and you're a citizen of this country, you have the right to vote. End of discussion. And that is from Maine to California to Georgia to Alabama to Mississippi. And second of all, we have got to work hard to put language back into the law that the Supreme Court did when they gutted the Voting Rights Act. And thirdly, I believe, and I've introduced legislation to encourage people to vote, to have Election Day as a national holiday. Okay? As I mentioned earlier, if you look at our voting turnouts compared to European countries, we are behind many of them. So what we are going to focus on this campaign is not only registering millions of people to vote, but focus on young people especially. We are making some progress in that direction. But if young people voted at the same level as older people in this country, we would transform the United States of America from top to bottom. So dealing with institutional racism, of which this is an integral part, the idea that political cowards are trying to deny people the right to vote because of the color of their skin, the idea that we're going back to where this country was 60 or 70 years ago is beyond belief, and we will end that practice immediately.
Thank you so much. So, Senator Sanders, I do have a follow-up to that, and it's connected to the previous question about the Supreme Court. You know, even before the nominations of Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch, we had a Supreme Court that was hostile to the right to vote, right, gutting the Voting Rights Act. So tell me, how do you plan to push a pro-democracy agenda with an anti-democracy Supreme Court?
That's a great question. And the answer is, and let me be as clear as I can in saying this, that real change is never going to come from Capitol Hill. Okay? Never is. And what I pledge to you, if elected president, is to be a president that will be traveling all over this country as part of a grassroots political movement. I will be part of that movement because I understand that when millions of people stand up and fight back, we will not be denied. So when we talk, when I talk about this campaign and transforming America, creating an economy that works for protecting a woman's right to choose, ending bigotry, the only way I know how to do that is when millions of people are prepared to stand up and fight back. And as President of the United States, I would be very proud to help lead that effort.
I have been in rooms with people that have been inspired by the vision that you just described. So I believe that you will not only do that, but have already done that. There are many people in the room who are fighting every day for the right to have a decent wage, the right to be together with their families, the right to be free outside of the jail cell. And the final question will be from Pam Roll Johnson. BJ. Pam is a janitor. At the University of Pittsburgh. Where are the people from Pennsylvania? Okay. Where she has worked for the past 28 years. She's a public sector member of 32. And is fighting against right to work and other attacks on workers' rights. For Pam, her union's not just about justice. It is about love. She met her husband of 16 years, Rich, through the union. And when she's not working, Pam is deeply involved in her community with several groups involving national wildlife and human rights. She's active in her church and likes to quote Father O'Malley, a Pittsburgh priest who says, "If not us, who else?"
Right.
So, Pam, take it away.
Hello. Thank you, Senator Sanders, for being here. As a public sector worker, last year when the Janus and Ask Me decision came through, it affected me and my coworkers. But we fought back as a strong union, which I thank God for. The question I have for you is, there are two workers. One's non-union and one's union. And the union employee has good wages, benefits, and retirement. The non-union worker is in a right-to-work state, where they can't even get the right to join a union. So what would you do as president to make sure that workers' rights in the workplace are stood up for?
Thank you. One of the untold stories of the last 40 years has been the decline of the middle class. People don't know this. 40, 50 years ago, it was possible for one worker to work 40 hours a week and earn enough money to take care of the whole family. I know you're laughing. That seems like prehistoric, right? Unbelievable. And what's happened over the last 40, 50 years, middle class has declined. You got half of the people in this country living paycheck to paycheck. In other words, your car breaks down. You may not have enough money to repair it. You don't get to work. You don't get to work. You get fired. You can't take care of your kids. Somebody in the family gets sick. You have large deductibles. You can't pay it. Family goes bankrupt. All right? So what we have seen for 40 years is a massive transfer of wealth in this country. Problem is, it has gone in the wrong direction. Instead of going from the rich down to the middle class, it has gone the other way. Trillions of dollars have gone from the working families of this country to the top 1%. And I happen to believe that the time is long overdue to reverse that trend. All right? So there are a number of ways you do that, but maybe the most important, and is consistent with legislation that I've introduced called the Workplace Democracy Act. What does the Workplace, thank you. What does the Workplace Democracy Act do? Well, it says that at a time when millions of workers want to join a union but are unable to do so because of illegal employer resistance, it says that if 50 people in a shop plus one sign a card, they got a union. And if the employer refuses to negotiate in good faith, that employer will pay a heavy price. And it says that in America, that legislation that we've introduced says that in America, workers have the constitutional right to organize. That's called freedom of assembly. And therefore, in that legislation, we outlaw the ability of states to pass and maintain right-to-work legislation. Now, I happen to believe, as somebody who has walked on many, many, many picket lines throughout my life, that it is not an accident that the decline of the middle class has run parallel to the decline of the trade union movement. Because at the end of the day, if a worker cannot collectively negotiate a contract, what ends up happening is that employers, the CEOs on top, make over 300 times what their average workers make. That is obscene. And that is why we need to grow the trade union movement in this country. Because when you have a strong trade union movement, when workers are earning decent wages, it not only impacts the people in the unions, it impacts all Americans because employers are forced to pay a decent wage. And I'm proud, by the way, I've worked with some folks to tell Amazon, owned by the wealthiest person in this country, that they will have to pay their workers at least $15 an hour. And we succeeded in doing that. And we succeeded in taking on Disney and forcing them to do that. And now, obviously, our goal is to pass a $15 an hour national minimum wage. Our goal now is to create a trade policy which says that if a company wants to shut down here and throw their workers out on the street and move to China or Mexico, you know what? Don't think that they are going to line up and get a federal contract. All right? So what we have seen for 40 years, average man or woman today is not earning any more in income despite an explosion of technology and productivity than he or she did 40 years ago, while the people on top are making out like bandits. And in fact, many of them are bandits. All right. So, you know, our job, by raising the minimum wage, having a sane trade policy, by supporting trade unions, by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure and creating millions of good-paying union jobs, by transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy, and creating millions more jobs. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Do not believe for 1 second that we cannot create an economy that works well for all. Do not believe that we cannot make health care a right for all people, that we cannot make higher education and child care affordable for all people. These are not radical ideas. These are ideas that we can achieve when we stand up and tell this 1% that we will no longer tolerate their greed, which is destroying the middle class of this country.
Right, thank you so much.
That it?
That's it.
All right, I'm just getting warmed up.
All right, give it up for Senator Sanders.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Senator.